Official company filings have given us a look behind the curtain. Another YouTuber has had criticism silenced by improper use of YouTube copyright claims, and far more in this packed episode of The Roundup. Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Roundup, our twice per week show that keeps you up to date with all of the most important gaming news. And be sure to check out yesterday's deep dive episode on faked E3 trailers. And with that bit of content pimped, let's get right into the news. First up, a note on Take-Two Interactive. So, Kotaku dug into their S3 filing, which was made because Take-Two was issuing 315,315 units of restricted stock to Zelnick Media, which, as Kotaku does point out, is restricted stock, so that's stock that only vests under certain conditions. Now, that name, Zelnick Media, that might ring a bell. That's because it was founded by Strauss Zelnick, the CEO of Take-Two. Now, Zelnick Media was founded in 2001 with 300 grand and eventually ended up taking over Take-Two pretty much. How did this happen? Well, Take-Two was mismanaged in the early 2000s, with there being a fraud investigation from the SEC. This led to the company's shareholders taking over. Now, at that stage, 5 investors, including Zelnick Media, owned 46% of the company's stock, and they decided to oust the prior management and install Strauss Zelnick as the CEO, with him having had prior video game experience. Right now, Zelnick Media is the single largest shareholder in Take-Two Interactive. I mean, sort of essentially owning it. So Take-Two stock moving over to Zelnick Media is pretty damn good for our boy Strauss, as Zelnick Media is a privately held company that he founded. Now, the terms of this recent restricted stock move are laid out, as Kotaku points out, in a 2014 management agreement between the two companies, with the incentive plan having restricted stocks that vest after time, which is pretty normal, as well as ones that vest based on various different performance metrics, with one category being recurrent consumer spending. Yep, a range of about 14,000 to 28,000 stocks can vest essentially based on the company's microtransaction performance. Now, that's about $90 a stock in the current value. Given, say, GTA Online, you can really see how that makes sense. And past that, well, just look at the NBA series, which is insane for how far its microtransactions go. As always, I bring this up because it's a matter of understanding the incentive structures that really dictate how the companies end up being ran. And really, in looking at things like this, well, look, a lot of their decisions make a hell of a lot more sense. In this case, microtransaction revenue is fantastic for their stock price, and the incentive structure of, well, this is aligned towards that. Business is business, and yeah, I'll admit, it makes me a bit sad that things like this are really what's driving so much of the industry decision-making. I think one only has to look at how incentive structures of, say, Electronic Arts and their current sort of business model have led them going down the whole live service nightmare that seems to have claimed both Anthem and Battlefield 5, as well as the cancellation of Dragon Age 4 Joplin, which is now, restarted as a live game, but of course to what degree we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, with that, let's move on to the Epic Store. So Tim Sweeney has explained a little bit more about why they chose a 12% cut for the Epic Store. It's pretty simple, he said, that 12% is super competitive while still allowing them to build a profitable store business. He said they net around 5% of that 12, with the rest being things like, costs like payment processing. But Sweeney did say that 5% could grow to 6 or 7% with economies of scale. So the more, they do, the more they can reduce the cost per transaction. He then went on to say that the 30% cut is why Ubisoft, Activision, and EA made their own stores, and he emphasized just how large 30% is. And I mean, yeah, he's not wrong. 30% is a massive cut for a middleman. And he went on to say that, say, grocery stores usually have a 10 or 15% cut on Amazon or iTunes gift cards, and that's with them being physical stores with employees that, have to stack shelves. So basically, it's Tim pointing out how large 30% is, and overall, it makes a lot of sense. It just doesn't touch on the consumer-facing problems that people are feeling right now, which is the exclusives within a hardware platform that just kind of feels a bit wrong, and the lack of store features. As a dev, I think 12% is amazing. I want it to be the industry standard, but frankly, it's going to be hard to get there if Epic managed to make everything around it feel utterly terrible, and if they manage to associate 12% with games being on a worse store with worse features that uses business tactics that I think many people do not like. And next we have a quick update about the Chinese games industry, and this is super important. Like, you really need to listen to this. So over there, video games are approved by the government. Yeah, pretty damn creepy right off the bat, isn't it? Well, don't worry, the censors have recently decided to kick things up a notch. And this is going to be a large problem for Western games, so you might be wondering what's changing. Well, games are not going to be able to depict dead bodies or blood of any type, so the old recolor the blood trick won't work anymore, and they need to contain correct information regarding history, politics, and law. Now that's a large problem because that government doesn't really have a view of history that is, in line with what happened in the past. Things like Tiananmen Square, Tibet, or the current prosecution of the Uyghurs. Suffice to say, they are not fans of historical accuracy. And make no mistake, you're dealing with a government that is the largest threat to individual freedoms on the face of our planet. It is that simple. It's one who in other news has between 1 and 3 million people in Xinjiang province locked up in internment, or as they call them, re-education camps. So past the ghastly requirements on meeting government truth, bodies and blood can't be depicted in video games at all with these regulations, and that is something that would of course prevent many Western games from being approved. It would require a lot of changes to make games work within that, although I believe existing games are fine. And all of this is typically why I look down on games that are willing to bend over backwards for them. It's why I was so disappointed in Rainbow Six Siege for its planned modification of its maps to be more in line with government requirements. Thankfully, Western consumers pretty much rose up to the degree where Ubisoft did not make those China-centric changes global. The thing is, though, the larger the Chinese market gets, the more sway it will have. And the more these, retrograde government-imposed values will sort of be expanded onto Western games because of the economics of the situation. And as you'll see later on in this video with the Patreon question of the day, there's a lot more to talk about on this one. Next, though, the Korean FTC, we have an interesting move from the Korean Fair Trade Commission, which has launched an investigation into online purchases in games, especially regarding games that have stuff that's targeted at children, their parental controls, and their refund policies. Basically, it very much seems targeted at microtransactions, especially where kids could be involved, and Riot, Nexon, NCSoft, and Blizzard are amongst the 10 companies that are in contact with the FTC about this. It doesn't seem like a massive change so far, we'll need to wait and see what they actually come out with, but it is part of the ongoing regulatory interest that we've seen in video game monetization, and that's something that likely will continue as both the US and the EU have taken quite an interest as well. Next, we have a very simple topic though. YouTube channel The Quartering made a video criticizing one of the Mortal Kombat 11 endings for, just plot details. Now, his review was manually claimed by Warner, even though this was a case of fair use. Critique very much does fall under that, so quite simply, it's bad behavior from Warner. It's exploiting the fire first, ask questions later systems of YouTube, systems that themselves exist in their current fashion because of how extremely overzealous right holders have been, and you just really have to go back to the massive Viacom lawsuits that pretty much almost took out YouTube and really changed the course of things years ago. Companies really that do this should be called out, and as always, Warner are really good at being public enemy. So for me, it's completely regardless of what Jeremy's take on that game was. I don't think his opinion really matters in this case because it's purely just company silencing an opinion that they don't like. It doesn't really matter what the opinion is, it's just a bad tactic to use. So, whether it's Jeremy or say Jim Sterling, of course, I'd say people who would have very different opinions on this problem, I'm equally not happy with that sort of thing happening to either of those people. Point is, the opinion doesn't matter, it's the fact that the company went and used the YouTube copyright system like that that I really have the opposition to. Next up, though, we have a rather interesting tweet from Daniel Ahmad, who is, by the way, a fantastic person to follow on Twitter. It's PUBG Corp financials for 2018, and they're pretty interesting, especially as compared to Fortnite and potentially to Apex Legends. So in 2018, PUBG Corp brought in 920 million in revenue with 310 of profit, with that being the sum of 790 from PC, 65 from mobile, and 60 from console, with Asia actually making up 53% of the revenue overall. And it's pretty damn interesting that the game is, so PC and Asia focused, though it does kind of make sense, and from what I understand, Asia doesn't really have a massive console penetration, and it mostly is PC based. Now you might be wondering how that all stacks up to Fortnite. And it's quite hard to tell with Epic being a private company, but analytics firm Superdata estimated yearly Fortnite profits of 2.4 billion, with a source also telling TechCrunch that the company was in 3 billion of profit with a 15 billion valuation. So as you can see, Fortnite is clearly, well, quite a bit larger than PUBG in terms of its revenue and profit. Now, Apex Legends was big at the start of the year. It managed to bring in 93 million in its first month, and that was a promising start, but the game appears to be facing dwindling player numbers, with its Twitch metrics really tanking a lot. We'll have to wait and see if its Battle Pass was able to help catch up, but given how it itself was quite sparse and the player numbers do seem to be declining, well, it seems like EA might be letting things kind of slip away a little bit. Indeed, the top end and the esports ecosystem is something that Respawn haven't really supported that well and still aren't really ready to support that well, which, was a bit of a problem, because while these things don't make a game, they sure do keep the top end happy, and that is particularly good for Twitch numbers, which is the one thing that people really are focused on. If anything, though, it does just show you how massive Battle Royale has become with Fortnite. I mean, Fortnite itself is changing the games industry, but also just the revenue from it is allowing Epic to attempt to, well, change the games industry. Then, on a very similar topic, 343 Industries did confirm that Halo Infinite is not going to have a Battle Royale mode. Yeah, as much as it probably would work fine mechanically in that game, I'm personally glad they're not trend chasing, and I'm hopeful that they're working in their own more unique modes. I think it would be great if they had that in the pipeline. Then finally, our Patreon question of the day. So, Nathaniel Hagen asked if we should be concerned about Tencent purchasing Epic, buying them out, and about the social credit score system that's being rolled out in China. So, on part one, it really depends on Tim Sweeney. He is the majority shareholder, and it is a privately owned company, so he has final power and that sort of thing. So really, it's a question of what he will do. I don't think he'll sell the company anytime soon, but being real, in 10 years, that $15 billion valuation will probably have increased. And if it does, well, it could be too good to resist. If they have a large gaming store by that stage, and if Tencent's WeGameX hasn't taken off, then yeah, I could see Tencent making a move there. As for the social credit score system, basically it's one of the most evil things going on right now. It's a thing in China. You don't need to read fiction. The dystopia is here. So people have a score. If you do things the government likes, your score goes up, and if you don't, it goes down. If you post something that's, anti-government, your score goes down. If you repost official state media, your score goes up. If you play too many video games, your score goes down. This score is extremely important. It impacts your chances of getting, say, a rental property, things like the interest rates that you will have on loans, train tickets. There's a blacklist for people who fall too far, like they're not allowed to take high-speed trains as an example, and a bunch more stuff. It really is worth reading up on, and put bluntly, you should be scared of what they're doing. It is basically using gamification, it's using lessons from our industry, essentially, to shape really what society is like. So that's what's going on in China. The government plans to expand it over the coming years. And really between that and the persecution of the Uyghurs in Xinjiang province, which, I think it's actually the largest internment program in the world right now. They call them re-education camps, but I mean, I don't think any of us think that a government should be able to pick you up and take you to a re-education camp and keep you there. So yeah, you need to read up on what's going on there. I think it's important for every responsible citizen of the world to know what is going on there, because it truly is ghastly, and it would be a very dark future indeed if it was to take place in a greater fashion over there or more broadly across the world. So there you go. Yep, we touched on some real world topics today, but I really do feel that they are useful to the games industry, or they impact us, because at the end of the day, it's gamification. It's like game design stuff being applied to society. That's something we should be a bit spooked by, but also as people who play games, that's the sort of stuff that we will cop onto early. We will see the patterns, we will know what's going on, and it's very important that we, do that. So, thank you very much for watching this video. Be sure to check out yesterday's deep dive on fake D3 trailers. It was quite a fun one to put together, and it has a sneak peek at a game that we were working on. So, yeah, you might find that interesting. And, with that, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.